FCO, NTD on 212, com check.
DPS, go. Inco, go. PUS, go. Surgeon, go. Booster, go. Copy that. We have a go from you guys.
This is Talking Sound.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome once again to the Talking Sound podcast, the only podcast on the internet where -10 is a number to be desired, coming at you live from the throbbing heart of rock and roll, that is Austin, Texas. Today on the Talking Sound podcast, we're going to have another business episode. The last one that we had about how to collect past due gig payments was actually really popular. We had quite a few comments on it. We had quite a few people that I know personally who listen to it that are not even musicians, and are just small business folk. And they were like, this is amazing information. You know, everybody going into business should really be aware of anything like this. So with that in mind, I decided that should probably be a regular feature. You know, it should be something that we take the time to investigate, something that we really spend the time trying to explain to y'all and break down a little bit more. I'm in the process right now of trying to find some entertainment lawyers to possibly have in, just to kind of let you know how to protect your rights as you're coming up with your next project, how to make sure that your royalties are taken care of, that you've created the proper business, things like that. Today's episode, though, is inspired by a little bit of real life in my life recently. And it's really about the top 5 ways to tell that you're about to have a nightmare gig, that this gig is about to go horribly, horribly awry. And it's really some good inside information. It's, I'm not going to say necessarily that it's a trade secret. It's not a trade secret per se, but it's definitely one of those things that you learn after having been in the field. You know, unfortunately, it's one of those that you only learn through hard knocks. You learn it by, well, as I said in the last episode about past due gig payments, you learn it through doing things hastily, and worrying too much about getting the gig and not so much about the process of the gig. And the process that you should go through to make sure that you are protected on all ends, that this kind of stuff doesn't happen to you, or at the very least, it's minimized. So let's go ahead and get started in this super fun countdown of top 5 ways to tell that you're about to have a nightmare gig. Number 1, nobody has any information. I guess technically number 5 is nobody has any information about the gig whatsoever, but they want to book you. This happens a lot. I've actually just started getting a rash of emails, and it's tough sometimes to sort through the chaff and the wheat, and to kind of find out which of these emails are actual emails, which of these emails are spam-malicious. Quite a few of them are spam-malicious whenever you have a contact form on a website. And with my business, HC Productions, where I do, you know, all of my live engineering through, where I book engineers, things like that, it's, you know, it does have a contact form, and it has to have a contact form. I'm a business. How else am I going to find out people want to give me business? But those contact forms are also used by a lot of spammers, and you get a lot of generalized emails. I've noticed a couple of them lately that have come through for photography gigs. I've recently added photography. I have quite a few photographers that I work with. I myself do photography for my websites, stuff like that, for my pedal modifications, all that kind of stuff. So I focus more on the product end. My other photographers focus more on event videography, bands, things like that, headshots and the like. They're much more portraiture photographers and event videographers, or event photographers. I do a lot more product photography. But that being said, it's really more about the emails that come through and being able to tell whether or not somebody really has their ducks in a row whenever they are contacting you. If they're contacting you with an email and they're just giving you generalized information like, hey, I have an upcoming event this month that I need photography for. Okay. You know, a little bit more detail is nice, you know, the date, things like that. You know, you really want to look for people who are giving you details. The more detailed the information they give you is, the easier the logistics are going to be. Really, when it comes to proper gig booking, proper gig prep, the devil is in the details. And whenever they can't give you a lot of information, it's really something to look out for. Like I said, and hey, you know, some people don't know the information to give you. That's an absolute truth too. I'm not saying don't respond to the email. What I'm saying is that should be little switch number one being clicked, to say, you know, if I'm having to fish for information about the upcoming gig that they're trying to book me for, do they really know why they need to book my services? Do they really know why they need me behind a soundboard or a camera or what have you? Now, I found it odd, both of these emails that I've gotten a couple months apart now. I've been updating a lot of websites. Talking Sound is one of them. But HC Productions right up around the new year got a huge redo in design, and one of those things was the new contact form. And the contact form that's there is great, but like I said, it seems to let some spam through here and there. But the emails that I get are interesting because they're both from people who happen to have some sort of issue that keeps them from talking on the phone. The first person was a person that was hearing impaired and was not able to talk on the phone. The second person had actually just had throat surgery and was in the ICU and was not able to talk on the phone and could only communicate via email. I'm not saying that those aren't true. I'm just saying that it's an awfully interesting coinkydink that the only two emails that I have gotten for reserving photography have both been somebody that can't talk to me on the phone. That to me is another big ding, ding, ding. It's not one of the top 5, but if after 2 or 3 emails back and forth, they don't want to talk on the phone about details, you really need to think about that, because email and text especially, no dice on text unless it's, hey buddy, where are you at? Because you aren't answering your phone and you're supposed to be on the way to the gig. Literally, that to me is a huge, huge bell ringer. I am an old school person. I used to, every other weekend, whenever my dad had me, I would actually sit in the back of his car and read tire manuals on tire sales while he was talking to someone on the phone and taking care of business, either that or presently on his way to go visit a client to take care of business and firmly shake hands and sign a contract to sell some tires. So to me, the personality of it, the handshake, the talking to someone on the phone to clarify, to get their sense of urgency about what needs to be done at the gig is utmost. It's high up on my list. If somebody doesn't have the time to talk to me on the phone for 5 minutes, 5 minutes of a phone call will clear up what 5-6 emails back and forth all day long would not handle. I guarantee you that almost every time. And if someone isn't willing to do that, and if they don't have information continuously about the gig that they are trying to book you on, let that be a red flag to you folks. Number 4 on the list is last minute bookings. I can't explain what a nightmare this typically is. Typically, if somebody has bailed on a gig, they either got a gig that was paying them a whole lot more, which, find out what they're paying. If it's not within your range, especially don't take it last minute. Last minute gigs should actually take higher cost of pay because they are last minute. You may have to put personal plans aside. I know if it's Monday and I don't have a gig planned for Wednesday yet, I may actually start looking at making some plans, That's just me. That's the way that I work. And, most of the time I'll wait till a couple days before something to say, even with my friends, if they're like, hey, let's go out for drinks and a movie on Wednesday night, let's go to Alamo Draft House. I'm like, you know what? Let me get back to you on Monday and confirm that. Because a lot of the times in the industry I'm in, you don't get those calls until Tuesday. Or Monday. But I used to have this bar here in Austin who regularly, man, I was there Wednesday, Friday nights, and regularly they would call me on a Thursday or a Saturday in the middle of the afternoon to ask me if I could be there or if I could get them an engineer. And it was one of those things of like, yeah, I can, but you're going to have to pay a premium for that. Because these people have already made plans in their day and it's 2:00 and you need an engineer there at 5 or 6 o'clock here in like the next 3 hours. So you can typically count on the fact that whenever there's a last minute booking like that and it literally just flies in through the rafters and hey, don't get me wrong. I love them. It's great whenever you have some dead time, something comes along, fills up the schedule for a day, you make a little coin. It's great. However, be wary of those, man. And once again, referring back to number 5, make sure that you get, especially on a last minute gig, as much detailed info as you can. Where load in is, what time load in is, what dock it's at, if there's a sound check beforehand, if house opens before, the sound check, all that kind of stuff. Find it out beforehand because the last thing you want is to get there and be thrown into the friggin' blender, man. There is nothing worse than that, and than having to go through the pain and heartbreak of just feeling rushed all night long, and not being able to give your bands the proper attention, not being able to give your clientele and your stage the attention that you should be giving. Not the tension, you will be giving it attention, the attention, the love and care that you should be giving it beforehand. Once again, as for those of you who listen, I am all about the pre-prep. I am all about the pre-show. It used to trip people out that for a 10 o'clock stage call for bands or 9 o'clock, I'd be there at 5 o'clock in the evening, turning things on, getting things ready. That's just the way I operate. I like to have things ready to go and have my time to make my realm mine for the evening or for the day, what have you. So, that's one thing to keep your eye out for is last minute bookings. Another one is referring back to those two, information that is in constant flux. When they're telling you that, you're going to have this many bands on your stage and you get there and there's 5 instead of 3. Or you get there and there's 5 instead of 7. That one's even more fun. It's easy to adjust whenever, there's a headliner and 4 acts and there were only supposed to be 3 acts. You can always trim some fat from the opening groups. A lot of opening groups only have about 45 minutes of material to begin with. So you can trim them back to 35, make another 30-minute set for that 4th band and leave the headliner the way it is. But whenever you end up with too many bands, man, that's tough. Or not enough bands, rather. That's hard because, like I said, a lot of bands just don't have the material. The band that I was in last, Shakuhachi Jones, we were very fortunate for the fact that when we came in with force and we wrote a lot of music, just like consistently a lot of music. And we would go up with the 35, 40-minute set ready, but more than once a band dropped out, something like that, or couldn't make it from out of town. And yeah, man, we had an extra 20 minutes of material and we were there to save the day. So big tip for bands right there. Always have extra material. Always have extra material because the chances of you getting extra stage time are actually really, really good sometimes. So if information is in constant flux like that, the gear list, the clients that are coming in, the bands that are coming in on stage, pay attention to that. That normally means that somebody really doesn't have their act together somewhere along the line. And it's, you know, it's logistics, and it's actually a very, very hard game. It's not an easy game at all. It's not a fun game. Some people have a logistic mindset. Some people don't. Some people are great managers of people. Some people are not. I know a lot of stage managers that are great managers of people and time, but they can't manage a load in or a load out to save their life. They know how to queue a show. That's it. They don't know anything about a load in. I know a lot of project managers that are just the opposite. They are great at a load in, but buddy, they know nothing at all about stage management. And it's really knowing the titles and knowing what goes into a show, that really, really helps you find your way, and also know what a show flow should be like, from the booking of a show to the prep of the gear list to the sets to everything. The more of that information you can learn, the more of those brains you can pick along the way, the better an engineer you're going to be, and the better your shows are going to be. Really, your gigs are all about the pre-prep. They really are. But if the information is in constant flux, if it's always changing, and you can't get a solid foothold, man, keep your eyes out for that. Keep your eyes out for that, because that means that someone along the line is really new to the game, or just doesn't have their head in this game for that gig in particular, and that can be trouble rapidly. So that's something to look out for. So you've got number 5 is no one has information but wants to book you for a gig. That's the fifth thing to look out for. Next, after that, is the last minute booking fairy. The people who call you up panicked at the last minute looking for somebody to come in and save their show. They normally ask for the world and don't understand why they can't get it at the last minute. So beware of that. What we just talked about, information that is in constant flux. When that happens, beware, man. Look out. Look out. You can't have that. So that's one to look out for. Number 2 on my list of the top 5 things to look out for to let you know you have a nightmare gig is emails or communications contain negative information. Just inside baseball. Whenever things like that start happening with people that you don't know from Adam, or that you've only worked a few gigs with, or period, are within gig emails, especially emails that are tagged to numerous people, where there's negative information about, listen, guys, this is going to be a great show. Unfortunately, the bar normally doesn't have good power. So, there's a way to say things like that, be wary of power situations. On occasion, there have been issues here, stuff like that. But for you to go through and have negative information about things, for you to have any kind of bullying language, talking about, hey, if this doesn't happen, this is going to happen or else, then you really need to look out for that, because that's the kind of stuff that, leads to confrontations later. And if somebody has that kind of negativity about a show, or is even putting negativity into it before the show even exists, how are they going to feel when the slightest thing goes wrong on set or on stage? Live event production is just that. It is live. Same thing as live news. How many times do you cut over, or do you see them cut over to a cameraman, and you see the cameraman talking, and they're like, John, well, we seem to be having some problems with your audio feed right now. We'll get back to you. You just got to play it off. You got to roll with it. To get huffy and puffy about it, to have a bad attitude about it, to talk negatively about people, is not professional, and it's not good. And whenever people have language in their stuff like, you're going to have to do what I say or else, look out for that, man, because that's the kind of stuff that is just, it's no dice. It's not good for anyone on set. They tend to be people that will follow you around and do your job for you after you just got done doing it. Worrywarts who, and here I am getting negative about it, you see, and it's hard not to. Like I said, this is kind of born of recent situation, but also one of those that, is just good advice for people. Learn to be on your toes, learn to be proactive, learn to sniff these things out beforehand. I'm not saying be wary of every email that comes in, but, if something seems really funky, check it out, man, because it might just be funky. And really, that's just the plain truth of it. It's if it smells like fish, it just might be fish. So look out for fishy things. Look out for, situations. If it makes you feel uncomfortable and kind of squirrely in your gut and like, hey, I don't know if I want to be on the gig with this guy, pay attention to that. Now, here we are. Just a few minutes left. We're going to talk about it. Number one. The number one way to tell that you're going to have a nightmare gig is if you mention a contract and they don't want any part of one. That's really the telltale sign right there. And we nailed that point home in the episode about protecting yourself and taking care of past due gig payments, that the more you can have a contract up front, and like $100 gig, $100 gig's $100 gig. Most people aren't going to shank you on a $100 gig. I'm talking about gigs where you're traveling out of town. I'm talking about gigs where you're coming out of your pocket on equipment before you get there. Where you're going to do an install or a repair on a system, or you're having to travel to provide a sound system for somebody. Those are the kind of gigs that you really, really, really need to protect yourself on. And really, as we said in the last episode about this, it's not even about protecting yourself. It's about protecting your client. It's about assuring the fact that what you are giving your client is what you talked about. And once again, that refers back to the fact that people aren't willing to talk on the phone. If people aren't willing to hammer things out and talk about it, then there's a sincere issue. And you need to think about that. Now, as things go on, you will build continuing relationships with people. That is a given. You'll get to the point, especially a lot of clubs don't like to be on contracts. They like to be on handshake deals. But if you can get them to guarantee that, at least sign this piece of paper saying, any night I'm here, this is what I'm guaranteed. Not that I'm guaranteed this number of nights a month or anything like that, but anytime I walk through this door, this is what I'm guaranteed for my night of work. And I'm sorry, it's really to protect yourself and me. It's to assure the fact that you get the services that you want as well. And any client that doesn't understand that, you need to really think about working with them. I had someone who literally told me that they had never been given one of those. They had never been given a contract by an independent contractor for services to be rendered, a labor agreement, so to speak, basically just detailing out what we talked about on the phone. And I was like, well, that I find that kind of surprising. If in a lustrous long career, you have never once seen a contract from somebody that is going out on a week-long gig. If you haven't seen that, then you really need to consider who you've been working with, because that means that they're willing to come out for a week and possibly leave you high and dry. And if they leave you high and dry, there's not thing one you can do about it, because you haven't written a contract. You don't have a labor agreement. So those things protect the client as well as the engineer involved. And it's pretty rare, at least in the world that I work in. I know most people who work festivals, things like that, they get a generalized email with all of their liability information, things like that, so that they can send in a W-9 or a 1099, whatever the person may need, all that kind of stuff. And, you know, to me, if somebody isn't asking for that information, if somebody isn't asking you for a 1099, if somebody isn't asking you for a W-9 or anything like that, even as an independent contractor, you really, really should think about why. And don't even be afraid to ask them why. You know, oh, is there some particular reason why you don't want that? You know, just curious. Most everyone I work with wants that. So, like I said, most bars, places like that want things under the table. Not really a great way to handle business. It's an easy way for everybody to get shafted on that end. But that is that industry. In the corporate realm, it's frequent that whenever you tell somebody yes, that they follow up with an email with the price per hour that you talked about, the day rate that you talked about, as well as any travel plans that were negotiated and the days that you have said that you will commit to the gig, as well as any of their rules. You know, like typically your dress code, arrival times, demeanor in front of the clientele, things like that. So once again, protect yourself, guys. Business is fun. It's great. It feels fantastic to conquer the world, to go out, to get gigs, to ply your trade and to ply your skills, but protect yourself. Remember, the 5 signs of a nightmare gig, everybody, are no one has information about what the booking is, but they still want to book your time. Bookings at the last minute. Info is constantly in flux about the gig. Emails or communications between you and the client or band have negative connotations to them, negative information, or bullying text. And the number one thing to look out for, the person does not want anything to do with the contract or written agreement. Those are the 5 things to keep your eyes out for, folks, as you are out there in the digital realm, plying your trade, trying to get gigs, trying to do recordings, all that kind of stuff. Now, on that note, while you're online, please don't forget, stop by and visit us. www.talkingsoundshow.com is the website. There on the website, you can find all of the articles. We actually just started up some new information because we have some guest bloggers who are going to be starting for us here soon, writing. We also just got some new updated RSS feeds to add to the industry news. So we're very excited about those possibilities and those things coming up. In addition to that, please stop by and visit us on Patreon, www.patreon.com/Talking Sound. There you can donate to the cause. We've had a couple people ask us, hey, you don't have a donate button. We do have a donate button on the top of the website, and that will take you to our Patreon page. There you can decide 50 cents a month, $1 a month, whatever you like, to help out the cause. And, you know, it's because of people like you that this show keeps going. It's because of our audience that new topics keep coming about. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, for listening, for watching all the episodes, for reading all the articles online. I am Chris Jordan, your host. And until next time, everybody, please keep reaching for 11. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Talking Sound.